Oh, boom, boom. Welcome, everybody to the service. Cult Rehab number 3. Oh my God, these Cult Rehab episodes have been absolute bangers, and we have an incredible guest today too. Ed is here with us, ex Jehovah's Witness, and I'm listening to his podcast today, a podcast that he sent me, and like, it's just so like, I was crying so many 3 times. I had to stop listening to it. I've never stopped. Like, usually it's like comedy where I'm like laughing so hard you gotta stop. This was like, he's with like an older, almost like sounded like a guru of loving kindness, like truly a master of loving kindness. And just they were talking about like just emotional and sexual repression and stuff like that. And honestly, it just made me feel so good, even just about the show, like Cult Rehab. Like, this is our 3rd episode. The first 2 have been absolute killers. Like, meaning like just so wild. Like yesterday, I don't know if y'all got a chance to check out Sarah on the show yesterday. She was in Nityananda and the Nityananda cult. And holy shit, he is just a maniac. He's so psycho that like it just made all these like super entertaining stories. So those clips are coming out, but the episode is up. That was on yesterday. And then Natalie Grant is going to come back, and already we put up a short from the Natalie Grant episode, our first episode of Cult Rehab, really officially this season. Because you could say we've done kind of one before, but like that was the first episode, and just so many comments, even on the shorts, like just people are really engaging with it and really getting value of it, because the ex-cult people, they really are a wise people. They know more stuff. Like, they're really good with, I don't know what it is. I guess it's because they go into the cult, and we were talking earlier the year about Keith Raniere and Nexium and stuff like that. And it's like, you got to go through these trainings, right? Like, they're working so hard to get the green sash. I got to get my green sash. If you watch the documentary, the HBO documentary on Nexium, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's just got him running around playing these games. But then when they get out, it's almost like in the Buddha's eyes, karmas are karmas. So those like, even if this cycle is like making you do these karmas, like there is this like work ethic that you get out of it, but then also this wisdom when you come out. It is like, there's like so much to learn from them. That's why I enjoy talking to them so much. And and they're talking about like a lot of like emotional repression, so relatable to being brown. We talked a lot about this with the Natalie episode. Like, he was talking about how I think I was telling you guys this before. My mom, I'm at my mom's house right now, and she just can't accept love. She wakes up in the morning, she's like, Amish, what are you gonna eat? It's like mad, right? And then I just tell her whatever I want to eat. She makes it. And now that I'm doing loving kindness trading, they teach it in the thing. They're like, someone makes food for you, you have to say thank you. Show them the love for that, right? So I go to my mom. I'm like, thanks, Mom. Like, I hug her. I'm like, thanks, Mom. And she's like this. She does this every day. She's cooking for me. She does this. She goes, I don't need you. I'm doing my job. Like, she's acting like that. Like, I'm just doing my job. What do you think I love? Need your love and your smell? Go get married. That's my only love. I don't care. Eat your food. It's like, what? It doesn't even make any sense. But that was when I first moved it. Now she's actually like, my rub here. It hurts. Rub for mummy. So that's getting weird. Maybe I got to move out now because it has been tough, like dating in here. It's an issue. Even though she's deaf, and I tell people she can't hear shit, but it's fine. We'll figure that out. David Barron's here, also a cult expert and a former cult member himself. He's got to do the show in the future. Oh my God, Cult News 101 got back to me. They're going to do the show in July, but then they have 2 other people. We're going to be booking dates for them in June. And David, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it. AKA Dentalian Jones. Yeah. David, what's up? But without any further ado, I can't wait to talk to our next, our Cult Rehab number 3 guest, Ed, former Jehovah's Witnesses, and just such a, like, so much wisdom in the podcast. But then he also has his own website about like how to think about wealth and life and stuff like that. And I'll pull that up in a bit and we'll talk about that too. But right now, send in a lot of loving kindness energies into the podcast for your guest, Ed. He's coming on the stream right now. Hey, Ed, how's it going?
Hey, Amish. How you doing, man? Doing good, man. Blessed.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful, like, it was like such a joint. It was a beautiful podcast, the one that you did. And you were talking about it, so relatable, a lot of the stuff that you went through. So let's just start with that. Like, tell us about getting out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and, what you feel comfortable speaking about and what were your, like, the big things right now, like, that are in your heart that you want to tell people.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think the title of the show, Cult Rehab, is fantastic. I think it's a very underserved community. People don't really think about rehab being a cult thing, but there's definitely a need for rehab. When I first started looking into exiting, the cult, the first time I heard it termed as a cult was my psychologist. I had to go see a psychologist, and he very gently proposed to me that I was part of a cult, and I resisted at first. I was like, a cult, that doesn't really fit my experience. How dare you? Yeah.
How dare you?
And with time, I came to see what he was trying to say. I get what that was about. So, it was a 27-year journey. I was born into it, and it was not easy to, like, get unentangled from all that. I'm still finding ways that I'm entangled. My family's still in it, and that's one of the reasons why I have a pseudo-anonymous approach, because I'm trying to protect them.
Yep.
So yeah, even though I'm out of it, I'm still a part of it.
Yeah. Well, in a weird way, like, it almost, and maybe this is me just getting more and more obsessed with the topic a little bit, but it seems like as a culture, we're all in it until we help each other all get out of it, because it will affect us. It'll come back. So many people are affected, and they're, like, hurt by it. And also, like, I guess it's just an underserved market. Nobody wants it, because before cults, actually, we were doing a lot of scams, and the scam people, especially the guys, they're just so embarrassed that they got. They're they just feel so, like, emasculated almost, that, like, they followed this guy. He told me he was, like, the guru. He's going to be the coach. We were talking yesterday about this guy who charges $60, men's like, empowerment coaching, but he's like a red pill guy, very, like, misogynistic. But his teachings, $60. The guy said $60. I was like, that's reasonable per minute. What?
Wow.
And you go to see him, and he goes, and someone's saying that he went to see the guy. So I was like, what's the teachings? Maybe they're powerful. He goes to teach it. He goes see the guy, and he goes, this is my book, read it. And he just left. And the guy paid him. Yeah, so it's actually almost, like, everywhere, and it's something that we don't notice. And I find with people who have been in cults, they're almost more weary of, like, it's not a cult, but, like, this is in the culture, and it's, like, a weird thing that people are forcing us to do. So yeah, if you could even speak on your experience of being, like, having two communities that almost you have to come out to, like, you have, like with the emotional stuff. I found that so, like, that's where I first was, like, crying when I was listening to it, because in the Indian community too, it's like you're not allowed to date. So it's all just these secret relationships. It's all like these young ninjas running out at night. Nobody knows. Like almost out the window. You're not out the window, but like we're talking about like double outfits, getting to the thing, like, and then just having to hide it, and maybe just in an abusive relationship with someone. So, yeah, if you could speak on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, the like living a double life. You
Yeah.
know, it took me a long time to realize how unhealthy that was. We all belong to different communities. We belong to our families. We might belong to a religious community for the most part. We belong to like a national, I guess, community. And it really depends on the degree of control, and how free are you in those communities. Like some families, you can do whatever you want and no one's going to say anything. And some families, you can't even go out, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I find a lot of similarities. But one of the groups that I found myself relating to when I was still a Jehovah's Witness was the South Asian community. There were a lot of similarities in the tight family, religious, cultural customs.
Yeah. And then just
time.
like pretending to be straight. Like I remember I used to do a comedy show downtown, and once a month we had a gay Indian night upstairs, and it was all guys that were married to women. And they would just go to this party, and it was like, it was like such a common thing, the double life.
You hit on so one of my things was, I came out gay around the same time when I left Jehovah's Witnesses, and for me, like the paradox was, here I am like preaching truth, but I'm being dishonest with my own truth. And to me, it seems like, how valuable is it to be telling people, here's what the truth is, but I'm lying to myself? It just felt very wrong. Yeah. And so you kind of have this like psychological cracking. You're like, you can't really be yourself. You have to be a fake person, and it's just not healthy. Long term, you can't pull that off.
It's not. It's the Buddha's main teaching too. That's why I got into Buddhism and unconditional like loving kindness training, and like that. A lot of the stuff that y'all were talking about in the podcast that I've been referencing, and I'm going to post a link to it in a second, but. A lot. It's like you're saying his name is Maddox. He's saying that like everything is like a mistake of like, you're not supposed to judge yourself. You're not supposed to block the energy that's coming out. You have to live true to it, or there's always going to be this kind of suffering,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, there's definitely a kind of suffering. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. No. I was going to say I've always found that they're like so on that in the gay community too. Actually, it is almost like a similar kind of like a wisdom that comes from quitting a cult. It's like quitting the like, okay, we broke out and we were just going to be ourselves. And I remember like years ago, like when I was 20, I went to the Gay Pride Parade in Toronto. It's a banger. It's incredible. But when I was 20, I went and I was like, I was still like very repressed and like a little bit of like issues with around that stuff. So I was like, oh, his penis is out and their penises are out. And this guy's penis is out. And I was just like, that's all I could see. I was like, this is whatever. And then like 5 years later, I went again and I was like, this is an advanced society. Like they get it. And the rest of us don't really get it, really. Like the only other pop-in culture in Toronto, you could say, is like club culture, like the club district, but they're assholes. They're such a bunch of jerks. They're like plague this gay. You go to the gay Church Street in Toronto, and like people are out, they're outgoing, they're having fun. It's like such a great way to live, I feel like.
It's like minorities, I feel like women experience this at some level with, patriarchy and men.
Yes.
Black and brown people feel, experience this to some degree. Gay, alternative minority, sexual minority populations experience this. So I almost feel like the ones that are least exposed to this are usually white male men, because there just hasn't been enough friction, you're kind of in the majority.
The white man is the devil, and this is the reason. Their colonial ways, but they are almost oppressed in their own way, though. They don't see it, and then they're mad at themselves all the time.
Right. We talked about this briefly, before, about like, I grew up bilingual, and when you have like two sets of reference points, you can kind of see where reality ends and where like imagination begins, because you're able to kind of navigate. You have 2 feet in 2 different worlds,
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, you don't really know what it's like. You don't realize the fiction around reality. And so, I mean, and then you get on top of that, I grew up minority in New York. I grew up in a free society, right? I
Yeah.
grew up, with all the privileges that come with a free
Yes,
society.
we should be grateful.
Yeah, and you look over history, and there's definitely been a progress. There's been a
Yeah,
progression
yeah,
of more and more freedom. Not going to deny that for sure. But just because you grow up in a free society doesn't mean you're entirely free.
yeah.
That there's some ways that you're not. And for me, the being in the cult was definitely got in the way of my freedom. I can share more. It was a massive time suck.
Yeah,
Massive,
dude. The time
massive.
commitment. That's right. That there's wisdom comes from that. You're working. Karmas are being done, even if they're false. Like you are becoming more disciplined, more capable of getting work done, and then also learning. Like when I look at your website, Wealth Beyond Money, it's almost like you must have had some training in order to be like, no, this is the correct,
And Amish, it's taken me a lot of years of rehab and reading and psychology and talking with friends, therapy, to see the positives. Because at first you kind of resisted because it's kind of what you're pulling away from and what you're fighting from.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to see the wisdom of it, and definitely there is an advantage. Everything comes with advantages and disadvantages. But there is definitely a lot of good lessons that come from it. So I'm not going to dog it completely.
Right.
But for many years, I mean, we had meetings, 3 times a week, a minimum of 5 hours a week. And on top of that, we had a kind of like an unspoken commitment to go out and preach to people, minimum of like 10 hours. There was no really hard minimum.
A week or like
a month.
Okay.
A month. Yeah, but still, you're talking about 520. Yeah, you're talking about an hour a day when you combine everything on a monthly basis. But if you want like brownie points, you got to do more.
Wow. Yeah, of course.
It's 30 at one point. In my teenage years, they had a incentive for you to become what they called a regular pioneer. So you had to put in 90 hours a month, which was 3 hours a day.
Damn. Just handing out the watchtowers,
handing out watchtowers, striking up conversations, trying to get people to have a Bible study. So I was involved when I was a kid. Heavily. Right? The illustrations are great.
It's beautifully drawn.
And we would, pass them out and get people to study. But most people were resistant, and I get it now. You're kind of like infringing on their own personal philosophy, their own personal ways of, you're kind of insinuating you're not doing the right thing.
They straight up would tell us, like, when they had 2 guys would come over and my uncle would just argue for hours. And we had to just tell him to just leave it. Like my mom had to be like, hey, stop. Like they're crazy. But like, because he would complain about it. I mean, like they'd come over, they'd lecture him for 2 hours and he loved it. He was like, yes, Jesus is great. Yes. He's all just doing it to do his comeback. He's like, yes, I love Jesus. It's a beautiful story. He's like, yes, yeah. And then he'd be like, okay, now let me tell you about Krishna. And they'd be like, no, it's
no, we're good.
Yeah. And he would just get so mad. He's like, no, but I listen to you. You have to listen. You have to listen to me now. And like, he would check the time even. And my mom had to like yell at him, like, just stop. Like, why are you talking? They're 15. You're not going to get them. They have a sophisticated brainwash operation that you're just not going to come in with one Krishna story and they're going to change their minds probably.
Although, one of the other benefits, I got involved, growing up in New York, I was exposed to people initially from the Latino community. So people from all parts of Latin America. But then I got bored of preaching to Christians, and I pivoted to talking to Muslims and Hindus.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and
that's good karmas. Those karmas pay double.
double points.
Double points.
And the Muslims, what I really enjoyed about them was how passionate and fiery they were about their religion. This was all in the years before 9/11, and when 9/11 happened, I kind of put one and one together, and I said, oh wow, these fiery, ultra passionate Muslims. There was a relationship between what had happened there. But I fed off of it. Yeah, it's a stereotype. Yeah,
that is it. Like that is the stereotype, and they are like just. Some cultures just yell a lot. It is really just unfortunate for them that they're going through it right now. And then also it is just a loud, but some cultures are just loud. Like they're just so loud, and whereas
with the Hindus, what was cool about them was they would listen and they would say yes, 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 and then at the end they'd say all paths lead to God, and I was confused. I was like, are you accepting? I'm not sure what happened here, but I kind of admired that approach. It was
That's
very like,
great.
I'm not going to resist what you're saying. It's great. You want some tea,
Yeah, that's nice. This is
it.
what happened with the Zen masters too. When the Christians went to convert them, like this, like 600-700 years ago, they were starting to go to convert them, and they were just coming in like so ready for a fight. It's like, where is their master? I will speak to him, and they would just say, "Come inside." Yes, tell me, and they would tell him about Jesus, and be like, "He is Buddha.
That's wonderful. Yeah, right.
He is
yeah.
enlightened. He's great." And they're like, "No, no, fight! You have to fight. Like, why are you getting mad or whatever? You have to like submit or whatever." Yeah, it is weird. They're trying to get everyone, and it's a little desperate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's interesting that the Muslim people were like, no way. Like they came back at you. They were like, we're gonna.
Oh yeah.
Have they ever been like? No, they're not physically violent. Actually, they almost have like a system of like, yes, we have discourse for this, and let me get Khaled. He is our debater, and he will destroy your argument, because they are like on the they're like hustling too. Christian.
Yeah, they're hustling. Yeah, it's a religious hustle. Yeah.
You got to grow the numbers, and if you can get an outsider, those karmas do pay double actually. But it's weird that y'all only let in 144,000. So like, did you ever think like that's tight? Like, I mean, all those St. Peter sketches for you guys would just be like, no, who's getting in at 144,000? Or is that not you guys?
Yeah, no, that's definitely us. If any of your listeners want to like go deeper into that, there's a book published by the Witnesses called Revelation, and it's a verse by verse breakdown of the book of Revelation. Whew. And in there, and we studied that book like 4 times cover to cover. So I mean, and that was one of the books we did cover to cover. I mean, indoctrination, the biblical teaching doctrination is steep, but in Revelation talks about 144,000. That would reign with Jesus in heaven.
Man, this is tight, yeah.
And he has to be blessed. And we actually had one of these people in our congregation. He was the head elder, and he was the only one who was allowed to partake of the wine and the bread when we celebrated the death of Jesus Christ memorial. And it was just like, strange. There was only 8,000 left at the time. The rest had already been taken up to heaven. How they get these numbers and how they get us to believe these things, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
But everyone else was happy living on kind of like a second rate plan on planet Earth.
Yeah, it is almost like like I like this leopard tiger. They put the leopard print on a 7-headed tiger. It's so original, like it. You want to get into. As a kid, I was like, this is tight. Like, this is so fun. These stories, they were kind of close to like Ramayana and Mahabharata. I gotta say though, and no disrespect to anyone in the Jehovah's Witness community here, but it does seem like when a B studio tries to make an action movie, like it's not quite tight. Like even compared to Scientology, like we both know Vishal. He was on our first episode, and like just going from a Jehovah's Witness to Scientology, I was like, Scientology, like he had good tips. People in the audience were like, I'm gonna do that one. That's tight. Mm-hmm. Jehovah's Witness, they were a little wacky and silly. Like it didn't seem like it was effective or productive in a lot of ways.
It feels like North Korean propaganda. When I see North Korean propaganda, has that same sort of like family smiling, looking off into the distance, and it just it feels cheesy. Yeah. But the irony is, we were taught from a very young age to avoid watching any violence on TV. Yeah. But the publications given to us by Jehovah's Witnesses were filled with like horrific, violent scenes of like God's destruction of, disobedient humanity.
Yeah.
Which is like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, which was like, wait a minute. So you're telling us no violence on TV, but you're giving us, you're showing children these violent scenes of like asteroids coming out of the skies, like destroying. Yeah. It was just it's double standard.
Yeah, for sure, man. One of the things that's actually popping up in the news quite a bit is, and I hate to get political, but it's these guys are talking about groomer. They're saying that like, the way I see it is like if a kindergarten teacher tells their students like, hey, it's okay if you're gay or trans or there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of these conservatives online that are like, groomer, you're grooming my kids. Hands off my kid. They have a hashtag like hands off my kids groomer, stuff like that. And it just seems like of all the people that would know, like these guys have these correction camps. It sounded like you have some familiarity with that from the podcast. The pray the gay away camps.
Mm-hmm.
Did you attend those? Like, because they do seem like obviously they're nonsense. They don't work, and yet there is this weird projection of like, oh no, you guys are grooming the kids if you are accepting of it. What was those? What were those camps like, and like what kind of stuff were they doing in there to try to convince or to try to convert?
Well, I personally didn't go. The witnesses, not that I'm aware of, had gay conversion camps. I have friends who did go to that. They were part of other Christian groups.
Right.
But what your listeners, might want to understand is that the Jehovah's Witnesses had their own judicial system. As a U.S. citizen, you have to kind of follow U.S. laws. But as a Jehovah's Witness, you have laws, and there's a body of governing people who can make decisions about your life. So for me personally, I lived in fear of. I never told anybody as a Jehovah's Witness that I was thinking about gay anything. As long as it wasn't acted on, there was no issue. But if I were to approach one of the elders and say, "Hey, brother, such and such, I am struggling with gay issues," then they would try to counsel me. They would try to give me biblical things to keep in mind. But I would be in a way kind of marked. I would have like a sort of like a stigma where that might come back and bite me later. So I learned to keep my mouth shut. It's kind of like operating under like a communist, like a Stasi KGB.
Yeah.
Where you can't really say things because people are going to turn you in. The community members would turn you in.
Yeah.
So I never really shared any of that. Yeah. Very North Korea, very communist. I know what that's like from my own experience. So I didn't experience it, but mostly because I didn't allow myself to be open about it.
Yeah, and how much, like, one thing that I actually forgot to mention yesterday, even, it was like, what's the information collecting system? Because that is such a psycho move, right? Like, you go into any success call too, and the first thing they do is they're like, okay, let's get an inventory of your weaknesses because we're gonna keep that on file and we're gonna use it for the rest of your, like, in 2 years when you're having doubts, I can bring this shit up and like whatever. So what was the system over there of getting that out of you?
So the elders had a special book that they used to, deal with these issues, these morality issues. And they would even train us, in the congregation, that if two witnesses came forward and accused someone else of something, then those witnesses could then bring it to the elders' attention, and then they would have a committee. And if you didn't admit and repent from your sin, then you can be excommunicated from they call it disfellowship, but it's basically the same thing as being excommunicated from the congregation. So one of the reasons why I ended up leaving, there was an elder who was a bit of a Machiavellian once I was about in my early 20s, on my way to being an elder. And he had this very sneaky way of insinuating to one of the members, is brother such and such, doing such and such thing. And as the moment that they said, yeah, something isn't right, he would get one more person, then he would basically fabricate a situation to kind of, dog on you.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't have the need to be part of this, like, judicial, you know what I mean? It's like a witch hunt.
And it's such a petty witch hunt. And this is where Jehovah's Witness really, I feel like, falls behind Scientology. Let's say, like, one difference, I'd say Scientology, I feel like they get real weaknesses and then maybe they prey on them more when you're doing them. So there is like a forcing to whatever. This whole thing of like making it up, that's like, so yeah, that is very unproductive because it did, like, I think Natalie was saying this too. It's like they're always like kicking people out and bring them in and like, you're excommunicated. Maybe if you work at it, maybe we'll let you back in. Like there's always like this mind game with it, and it just seems like such a waste of time.
It was, the group shaming was really bad, very medieval. Like essentially if someone was accused of something and they didn't repent from it right then and there, and how they determined that, I have no idea other than someone vocalizing it. They would announce it at the end of a meeting that such and such person has been disfellowshipped. And we all knew that meant that we could no longer talk to them for at least the next year or two at minimum. And they would have to continue going back to the Kingdom Hall to show that they repented. And it was this constant shaming. And the other thing is that they weaponize relationships. So they tell you you can't have friends outside of the witnesses. And then if you don't behave, they cut you off from all of your social circle, including your family. This is the reason why I'm not, I have complete freedom to say all that I'm saying with my name, because if you are disfellowshipped, then not even your family is allowed to speak with you. So it's like you're worse than a criminal.
Yeah, that's wild. That is, and that's so JW too. Like, you can just be on this podcast and they won't even find you. They just seem so behind the times, Like Scientology, you'd probably be like, I can't. Like Scientology is like, it's tougher. I feel like they're maybe out here watching whatever. They're doing like they're probably like burning a candle and doing a prayer or something. You know what I mean? Like, it does seem like you go in. It feels a little bit like those, I don't know, did you ever watch old Star Trek?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like 10 of the episodes were them going down to a planet. It's like a utopia. Then they go to their high temple. They break a wall in the back. And then Spock says, fascinating. This whole civilization is run by a computer. It's like there's nothing back there. It's just like this programming in the back. And they're all like, we're happy and perfect. It's wild that and even you were saying in the podcast too, that like they train you to be this jolly guy, this like Ned Flanders type of character, while you're doing all this sinful stuff, like so vicious, so mean. But then the front face is always like, hello, brother.
Hello, brother.
What do you do today? Like, it was so sweet. What's this loving training? Because, I get these loving kindness trainings. I was into someone's class and, when they talk to each other, they will say, your class last week was so beautiful. And they say, I received that and I honor you and I send back love to you too. And I think it's so nice, like it is actually better than what most people do, which is just kind of a fake, like, how are you? Fine. And it's just like fake. Like, they almost have creating systems in day-to-day life to be like, no, it has to be genuine. The problem is that now, then I hear you guys, y'all are talking about like they're training you guys to be nice, you to be nice. What's the training to be nice? Is it like, are they telling you to be fake, or are they saying like, like how do you train that?
I mean, one of the scriptures, because they always drilled us with scriptures, they were talking about the fruits of the Spirit. And we were always told that, love, joy, peace, and all these things. And so they would encourage us to develop the fruits of the Spirit, but at the same time, avoid the fruits of the flesh. And, fornication and jealousy and anger and all these things. There was definitely a lot of training to, step away from those negative things. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of being hidden, and authenticity really isn't a thing, like,
okay, so they don't teach that.
Yeah. You can be authentic until a certain degree, but if you're questioning things, or if you're, a baptized member of Jehovah's Witnesses and you're doing sinful activities and you're not repenting, there's a lot of stuff underneath that isn't being exposed. Pedophiles, that's one of the big things that, they don't want media attention. That type of thing exists. It exists in all communities, unfortunately, but they don't want to involve the authorities because it puts a bad rap on the name, on Jehovah's Witnesses. So lots of things are covered up.
Yeah, that is wild. I mean, that whole like reversing and then shaming you, I guess that is a training. Like, sometimes you sit down in class, you get a book, it's like, smile. And you're talking to them, say it like this. There's a script or whatever. But then I guess a lot of times it is like, like yesterday, Sarah was saying that, our guest yesterday was saying that Nityananda, the cult leader, he would proposition sex. And then if you said no, he would be like, yes, I was testing you. You're too shy or whatever. Like, this was a test for you, foolish. It was because you are too shy. So it's like this subtle kind of like day-to-day, I'm adjusting your behavior so that you're kind of like the way I like. That was one thing with Nityananda though. Like, the guys throwing these banger events, even Scientology, like, they got these award shows, they got these big things. There's a little pomp, little circumstance. Feel like JW not there, but tell me what's anything fun? Any kirtan type of stuff, like dancing, singing, or was it all just like, no, suffering?
Suffering. Yeah. That's a great question, man. different congregations had different levels of
Wow. So
tolerance
they had
for.
like Baptists. They had like a Baptist JW, and then you're like, man, they're doing all the singing.
Yeah. And so luckily for me, I was in a Latino congregation. So people from all of Latin America, and it's tough to beat out the dancing and the joviality, from the
Yeah.
Latinos. So we would get to, not to totally dog it, we would get together maybe once a month, once every 2 months, and we'd have celebrations, maybe like a graduation or a baby shower or a wedding. And there was dancing, but of course it was very, none of this close sexual, like everything was very like watched, but you could still dance. Whereas, you can still dance. We
Such a
had
creepy dance.
singing,
Yeah.
very, prudish dancing.
Yeah.
But then when we went to the English speaking congregations, it was totally different. It was much more Protestant ethic, very, serious.
Interesting.
So yeah, it varied.
Wow. So with all their brainwashing, you still can't get the original thing. Like with different regions, it's going to change.
This culture, there's always, speaking of the broader term, there's always culture that's a part of it as well.
Yeah. That is where I do feel like they do seem a little bit behind on stuff. Like it's like you got to make it cool, man. I mean, make it fun. Joel, like I love Joel Osteen. I don't know if you're into any kind of stuff like that. He is a loving kindness teacher. It's beautiful work. Like his sermons are beautiful. I don't know what he's doing when you get there. Like who knows? But like the teachings are there. With Jehovah's Witness, yeah, it's hard to find like the redeeming thing. Like even Natalie Grant, who's coming in next week, she's just sending me all kinds of text messages like, oh, here's another article. They have like forced labor camps. They're just doing all the most vicious stuff. Like there's a one article I said like they got a kid to sign a billion-year contract, like just saying like I'm in for I think it was $1 billion, or Scientology definitely does $1 billion-year contracts. Nityananda, $1 billion-year contracts. And they just tell you it's legal when you're like 8 years old. They're like, this is a legal contract. Read it. Yep. Sign that over. Your life is mine. And you're doing, and then they just work until they're like 30. And then they realize like, what the hell am I doing?
It's, I got baptized when I was 8 years old, and baptism is a kind of like contract of sorts, and you get baptized in front of many people. And looking back, I don't think it's right for an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, a prepubescent person to get baptized, because you have not dealt with hormones, and I mean it's you're kind of being hacked, where you're being forced to make this compromise before you know what it's really like to be human.
It's almost like that's the time to get, like, a lot of these guys would be like, can't get kids. That's when you get the real brainwashing. It's like, just get the original programming in. That's like almost like the second generation kind of what they're going for. That's what it makes it terrifying that they're able to pull it off. So tell me then, how did your family end up in it? Because I feel like the whole thing, it's always like one generation back converted in.
Or yeah, you got some families that are multi-generation. I mean, Witness has only been around since like the 1850s or 60s. So, I'm talking about 150 years. Yeah. But most of them, I was born into it, which I think is a completely different experience from those who choose to become one. I think if you choose to become it, then, so be it. That's great. It works for you, and you can choose it, and you can choose to get out of it. But when you raise someone in it, it's a completely different thing,
Yeah.
It's because it's your world, and you don't know any better, and you don't know how you're being kind of programmed and kind of like controlled in a way, which we all kind of go through in different ways. But I was, my mom converted. She had been Catholic in Central America, and she became a Jehovah's Witness by choice. And I mean, she's still a witness to this day. She still goes to the meetings. But I felt like I didn't have a choice. I was kind of coerced the whole time.
Wow.
And so it wasn't until I was like much older that I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. I don't want to do this. But you're not really given an out. You kind of have to either leave quietly, or you tell them you want to renounce, and they'll label you an apostate if you're, and that's like the worst thing, because you're basically saying what you believe is bullshit. It's not an easy thing, but I was born into it.
Hannah G says, children get baptized and sign contracts to do full-time ministry. Children's brains are developed. My brother got disfellowshipped at 15 and was homeless. He was baptized too early. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think she meant to say
definitely.
aren't developed, but yeah, totally. I mean, it's like it's abusive. How do they get away with it legally? Is it just are people just feel bad? It's like, well, it's a religion because honestly, this is very like a lot of Hindu cults get away with this,
Mhm.
but who wants to call out Hindus? You know, like
Mhm.
you're just like, oh well, that's the
Mhm.
culture maybe or whatever. You
Mhm.
know, like uh,
Religious freedom,
religious
you know.
freedom and yeah, exactly. We don't want to insult their god or whatever. So
Mhm.
like legally, how do they get away with it? Like, are they spending a lot of money on legal? Because they don't seem like they're on it like that. Like Scientology, let's say, $1 billion legal contracts. Are they becoming lawyers and stuff and like fighting these legal battles? Have you found?
There are legal, run-ins, like, and especially in other countries. Like I remember reading about Russia, and when Russia was leaving communist bloc, there was these legal battles that they would have. But like here in the U.S., it's voluntary. As a child, you're under your parents' custody, and if your parents are taking you to a religion, then as a child, you really don't have much of a say as far as I don't want to go. You could rebel,
Yeah.
but most children under the age of, like, I don't know, 13, 14 won't really do that. And as far as baptism, you're not really signing anything, but you are making a public demonstration of a commitment. And so it's kind of all, there's no paper trail. So because there's no paper trail, it's all just kind of like group group pressure, peer pressure.
Yeah, it's all just a fugazi, isn't it? It's all just scaring you into like, and then if you actually, I guess it is like if a dog's chasing your car, if the car stops, the dog just goes, okay, what? Like it is like a bully saying, like, if you do it, you're done, whatever. And it's like, yeah, afterlife, like, well, like, yeah,
Right.
in the afterlife. But that's great that they're not following you around. They're just kind of like, okay, once they're gone, they're gone. That does seem like part of the niceness almost, like
Mm-hmm.
not polite, like they will stop talking to you, but then you haven't seen violence. You haven't seen them be like, we're sending a guy to their house and posting things.
Personally, I've never seen violence. Yeah, I was, Scientology. I was watching some of that. And they would actually hit people. I haven't seen violence of that type. Really, just a lot of shaming.
Right.
Which is kind of more subtle and in a way more wicked. Because you can't really prove it either way. It's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
one can help you, really. You know.
Yeah, no, and I think that's why like good sex ed is so important because you just even as like for me, my mom almost sent me to some like Hindu cult to learn all that to basically just say like be a brahmachari, which is like be a celibate and then marry one girl, kind of you know what I mean? And then like they were actually homophobic in the book that she got and stuff like that, but she doesn't know, she doesn't get it. So and the guy running it, he looked like he was because like, and I was saying this to yesterday, like when they make these celibate organizations, it's like you're creating a community center for pedophiles. Like you're making a
Mhm.
space for them to go and feel safe and have access. And the ad that she got for me, it was this guy. He's like flexing like this. He's not even jacked. He's just a huge guy. He's like this, and there's like 6 or 7 kids like just kind of like hanging off of him and playing with him, and they're kids. And it says the sales pitch is like 1 drop of my semen can burn through a rock. And even I was 12, I was like, I don't need it. Also, this is 100% a pedophile. Even like
Yeah.
when I was 12, my mom like she like smacked me. She's like, "You have no respect. What do you know?" I mean, it's
Crazy.
almost like he's just advertising. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of them
Yeah.
come out like that. But yeah, the other thing I actually that really hit me with the podcast that you did though, just speaking of the shame and the sexual repression, shame is enough. And Hannah's actually answering one of my earlier questions. Like they have huge legal departments, and there's just it seems like they're getting away. It does seem like they get away mostly with the shame tactics, and it's interesting. Even like coming out of COVID, people feel kind of like awkward. I feel like, and people
Mhm.
already felt awkward. So it's almost like the things that you've gone through, and this is why there is like this wisdom that we can get from ex cult members because you're coming out and like coming back into your own in life. But everyone, do you see that in everyone else? Like it feels like everyone is feeling like it. Like it was so relatable things that you're talking about, and like um just with like dating, I've seen a lot of it where people are just too scared to talk to anyone about it. You were saying you were like when you came out, you couldn't talk to anyone and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, I don't know if can you tell us a little bit of like how you came into your own and how you felt like more free to be yourself and be in your community as yourself?
Yeah. I mean, it was a, you just get sick and tired of like repressing your voice,
Yeah,
and I, after that experience, personally for me, I express myself. I want to be authentic to who I am, and some people will receive it, and some
yeah,
people will resist it. And when someone resists my expression of self, it reminds me a lot of where I came from. Like you kind of develop this sixth sense, like you were saying, the sense of like you can smell the shaming, you can smell this sort of like fear. It really,
yeah.
the split is between love and fear. I'm not going to try to get uber religious here, but
No, I agree with that
spiritual.
too. You know, that's what they teach in loving kindness and in like all these teachings, they teach that. And even the podcast that you did, like the way he's talking to you about it was all very like, overcoming that kind of stuff, you know?
And you can see, love and fear really can't coexist together. Love requires courage. Love requires you to, speak with what's truly, inside of you. And fear is all about repression and control. And,
Yeah.
once you feel that, once I feel that repression or control from anyone or from an entity or an institution, I'm already like my antennas go up, and I'm like, okay, there's something here that I don't like. But love is all about acceptance, and there isn't control.
Yeah.
It's really, you are who you are, and I'm not gonna get in the way of that. As long as you're respecting my boundaries,
Yeah.
then there's nothing that I need to. Changing you or forcing you to change into something is not a healthy. It's a pattern that I avoid. I mean, in
Yeah.
relationships and anything really.
It's interesting how Maddox you're saying was talking about how like his dad told him like you're not supposed to hug me. Like you're not allowed to like obviously it's not like a cult thing, but like
Mhm.
he told him, like you're not allowed to hug me. And then just like as he got older, he started hugging his dad, and then his dad like eventually kissed him. I was like, this is so much. Like even as a kid, I remember thinking like, we don't say I love you in our family. How come we don't say I love you? And they were like, no, that's bad. It's like it's bad. You're not supposed to be all happy or something. Did they teach you guys? Did they teach all that? Like in Jehovah's Witness, were you so taught to see your family as more of like this is just someone you work with or something, or like were you not allowed? Because when you came out and you were saying that like you didn't feel like you could go to your mom for to be like, hey, like this is what's happening to me, kind of thing. Like, did they teach her that? I guess they would have to teach her that like he's not allowed, or
There's so much emotional repression to this day, Amish. I have a relationship with my mom, and I know she loves me, and she's always been very dedicated to me. But I still can't be myself. I don't have conversations with her about my partner. I don't have conversations. So there's
yeah,
a whole part of me that's still severed
oh, yeah,
as a
same,
way to maintain that relationship. It feels empty.
yeah,
It's missing something. And initially, I thought that was how relationships are, because when your mom is that way with you, you think that's how relationships are, and then you learn, wait a minute, there's some people you can be authentically yourself,
yeah,
and they will still accept you and love you. And finding those people, I found, has been rare, but it's an unhealthy pattern, because when you can't really express yourself, then you really don't have an authentic relationship. It's a shell.
yeah. And he was saying that too, like y'all were talking about that too. It's like you have to find people who let you express yourself genuinely as who you are, and then they can like encourage that, because you can even get into a relationship where someone's just kind of like subtly toxic and abusive and always like kind of holding you down and not letting you um express yourself and stuff like that. But yeah, no, this has been great. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. We appreciate it here. And this is our third episode. I'm still figuring it out. But it's been great chatting with everyone. Thank you so much. And is there anything else that you can tell us about I guess like getting out and like the resources maybe that you got when you were out?
Yeah, it's been a progression of finding more and more freedom. You know, I had the religious lack of freedom, or the spiritual lack of freedom, and I was able to break away from that. And then as I kind of went deeper into my journey, I realized that there were, you know, political institutions that were keeping you unfree. There were economic institutions that were keeping you unfree.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, my life so far has been a study of like becoming more and more free in an unfree world. You know, there's a book by Harry Brown by that title.
Brilliant. It's so
and
true.
It is, you know, we have lots of freedoms, not going to take that for granted. But, you know, I've most recently focused on financial freedom, because it's not considered a cult or religion, but when you look at people's behaviors around it, it smells of it. You know, it has a lot of the fear and coercion and control. It's very advanced. You know, it's not so 18th century as Jehovah's Witnesses are. So that's been something I've been focusing on, and that's what I write on now. I'm writing a book, Wealth Beyond Money, and my focus is what are those elements that create wealth that isn't about money, because there's a huge focus on money as the only thing for wealth, but in the end it's like a religion as well, you know.
That is brilliant. It is hard to tell people about that, because it requires like an extra level of education, because I feel like the cult on that is basically like there's this mentality of like, oh, you're a communist, or you're gonna like destroy our society if you start having different ideas about wealth. Like you got to get in line and you got to get in the rat race and fight for the top money. And yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. It is hard to like explain it to people sometimes, but I think your website actually does a great job of like, it is very efficient, and it is like almost looking at money through that like very wise and meditative sense. It's a great website. I love it. I read like 2 articles, and the philosophy right away, you can tell like it's smart. It kind of reminds me of like Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you're into this stuff.
Yeah, I love Naval. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. He's one of the people I look up to. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like this wisdom of like just looking at money in a different way, and it can free so much. I guess it is like leaving. It is like a cult in that sense. Like your beliefs in it will keep you in a rat race forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in the end, you spend a lifetime, just like I did with the witnesses, a lifetime doing their shit. Then you spend a lifetime doing the money game, and then before you know it, your time is up, and you spent your whole life, unfortunately. And that's what I'm passionate about, is freeing people up to really live their most authentic life, really.
Wow, amazing. So then so this website, let me put it back. Where do I start? Because I do love programs. This is why I'm obsessed with cult stuff, is because someone says they have a program, I'm like, I'll do it. What is it? It's like, oh, I have a financial freedom. Sign me up. I'll do a program, especially if it's like, I feel like it's just a program that you've made, like it's free, right?
Yeah. So it's a Substack. So it's wealthbeyondmoney.substack.com. There's a paid version and there's a free version. My focus isn't necessarily about the money. It's really about building community and finding people who see that there's wealth, you know, that value wealth beyond money and what that's like. You know, a lot of the belonging things, self-esteem things. Especially. So it has like it has a religious undertone, but I'm definitely not trying to form a cult or religion, you know?
No, this is actually a very smart and reasonable business, though. You know, like we actually looked at a ton of scams before this. This is how I got into even cult rehab, because before we were doing scam, like we would bring on, and my partner that I started this channel with, CoffeeZilla, he still does it. He's at like 1 million subs now. He's like full-time calling out scams. And the amount of people that have these get rich quick schemes, they're thousands of dollars, like just like $2,000 or $5,000, and I'll teach you everything you need to know and whatever. And like, yeah, but I feel like this is very like reasonable. And like I said, I read a couple of the articles, and they are brilliant. I mean, they're just so smart and can break you out of like a rat race mentality that you could just spend 10 years of your life in, you know?
Yeah.
Have you? Yep. Good.
I was just going to say, yeah, anyone wants to subscribe, be more than happy to have them, and reach out. Any email that you reply to, I get it in my inbox. So it's a great way to, I'm trying to break away from the algorithm social media way, because, a lot of our relationships have become dominated by algorithms, and I don't think it's a healthy way to go. So I like the email, like the one-on-one, you know.
That's great. Yeah. That is great. That's very like anti-cult of you. To be like, don't put a massive, I don't want to be some kind of a mass control business or whatever. It's like, talk to me, fix one thing at a time. No, and that was another thing that we found with the scams over time is who's trying to basically build a cult. like that's how you know who's a scam. It's like they have a $50 thing to start you off. They
Mhm.
have a $150 thing next, and then it goes to 20,000, 10,000. Then it goes to like, give me everything and I'll teach you whatever. And yeah, the honest people are always like actually trying to help you. More of like, I'm going to actually interact with you and not just send you to a
Mhm.
class that I did
Right.
5 years ago. That's
Yeah.
whatever. So
Very impersonal. It's yeah. I feel like as modern humans, we're so used to being in these one-way relationships, like media talking down to us, teachers talking down to us, religion talking down to us, and we don't ever have a chance to like have a conversation, a back and forth.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
always like top down, and you just got to listen and take it, and that's it. And to me, that's one of the hallmarks of one of these like cults or scams, is that no one's really getting to know you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're just a product, you're just a number, and that's the extent of it.
They give you a type almost. Like I feel like the efficient ones, they start typing you off. They do like some kind of Brig Myers system, and then they're like, okay, put those guys will work in the kitchen. These guys will do finances. These guys will do whatever. It's like they're trying to just put you in a box and push you
Mm-hmm.
harder and harder into it. Versus everyone being like that genuine self-expression of
Mm-hmm.
This infinite loving kindness that is apparently you know uh uh like giving us all life, and we're supposed to get back to somehow. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I think you're doing a great job. I'd be happy to let others know. I know lots of people who I think would want to listen to this and maybe join and have a chat with you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yeah, and thanks everyone for listening. Let me just go through a couple of comments here real quick. Shunning is against human rights. I think someone's been just changing their name the whole time. That's great. I don't get how they do it, but like yeah, I think earlier they were saying like I hate JW or something like that. You are welcome. God is great. Drip drip. We want more awesome survivors and speakers. Fun. Important to use your voice to change it, to make change in the world. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it is so like even what they teach in like loving kindness meditation, or the compassion meditation. It really, you have to get out of a mentality, and I feel like your blog is kind of like this, but you have to really get out of a mentality of like, what am I gonna get out of something, and then actually have like, no, they like, there's so much that we can learn from this, and so much that we get from helping each other and helping each other come out of stuff like this. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks. Yeah, Fry. Can you post his link somewhere? Yes, I will have the link in the comment section in a minute. But thanks everyone for coming. You are loved. Appreciate you. JW is destroying families. I love the direction of this channel and diversity. Cool stuff. Thank you so much. No blood. Great. Great icon. Papi Blanco TV. Yo, what up, baby? What up? What up? What up? Papi Blanco was on, I did a podcast with these guys, Duke and Dawn, last week, a little joint congregation, and Papi Blanco is their producer. So thanks for coming in. Rose Lindsay is here. Yeah, man, he actually covers all of these like men's success cults, and maybe in the future, if you want, we can come back and just kind of like review some of them. Because the guy who charges $60 a minute, his ads are bonkers. They're so silly. Yeah, so it would be good to review it because yeah, they suck people in. I was saying yesterday, like these men's success cults, like they're teaching you to be like an aggressive guy to like just like destroy your enemies and dominate the market. But like right now, you're the market. So they're gonna charge $60 an hour, and they're gonna mess with you, and like it's so abusive. It seems like. Fry is here. Rose Lindsay, thank you so much. Bolt, thanks everyone. You are loved. Join us next week for Natalie Grand. Natalie Grand will be returning next week, author of Cult Girls. And then, yeah, we got so many banger guests coming up. Later this month, I actually have a comic coming on. So funny. And he was in Scientology too. So he's going to be on. That's going to be an amazing episode. And then we have the people from Cult News 101. I think the main producer of it is coming in July. But then he sent me two other people just before we started, actually, two other people that were saying that they wanted to come on and do an episode of Cult Rehab. And they've all been amazing episodes. Honestly, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much. Neil is here. Fry, Hannah G. Thanks, everyone. You are loved. Come back next week. Oh, and sign up for Cult Rehab here. All right. Peace.